They all look the same. There's different ways of acquiring it, okay? You won't do this. Who would? Really, who came up with this? Oh, West Point came up with this. Why? Okay, that makes no sense. Okay, all right, any questions? Okay, so they're all different views and methods to visualize the glenohumeral joint, yes?
So because it's a joint,
Mhm.
typically you need 3 projections, so
Mhm.
normally there's 2 plus one of these weird ones.
Right, exactly. So typically, the shoulder, okay, this is the except shoulder, most places will have the routine external internal rotation, and then they will add one of those views,
Their choice.
their choice.
Got it.
Yeah, doctor's choice. All right, to evaluate the glenoid cavity, So we will talk about the posterior oblique position or the Gration method, and I think this is it right here. This is the Gration method. Simply all this is instead of doing them in a true supine, okay, or AP projection, you're going to oblique your patient approximately 45 degrees. In doing so, it's going to open up the joint between the humeral head and the glenoid cavity. Here's a routine shoulder, okay? Did you guys notice anything different or unusual when looking at any of these AP projections? We see the articulation, but is the joint truly open? There's not. So when you look at all these other images back here, let's go back here. Okay, here's AP, okay? Is the joint open? Okay, that's your external rotation. Here's your internal rotation. Is the joint open? You actually see the head superimposed within the glenoid cavity. Yeah? The superimposition. You guys agree? All right. You know what's funny is maybe 4 weeks ago you guys would have no idea what I'm talking about. Now you guys are seeing the structures that you probably otherwise wouldn't have seen 3 or 4 weeks ago. Because I'm saying you see superimposition, you're like, uh-huh. You guys are getting your eyes trained. All right, so let's go over here, Gracie method. So to open up that joint space, we are going to rotate our patient approximately 45 degrees to open up the articulation between the head and the cavity. So we're going to rotate our patient to the affected side. Rotate 45 degrees to the affected side. Okay? Now here is the Gration method. All Gration method is 45-degree obliquity of the patient. Bless you. Okay? So patient is rotated 45 degrees. Center is going to be directed at the scapulohumeral joint. Okay? Nothing different than what you've already learned. It's just you're turning your patient in a 45-degree angulation. Now, what are you going to do with the hand? Okay? Depends on the protocol in the hospital. It can either be external or they just leave it in neutral. That this means hanging by their side. Okay? Hold your breath, don't move, click. All right, here's another one. Coronary fossa without superimposition of the humeral head. Oh, that's kind of freaky. There's a lot of artifact on there. Okay. But you can see that there is no, the joint space is free and clear. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah? Okay. All right. Okay. AP neutral. So what we covered there on the previous slides were non-trauma. This is trauma. It's considered trauma because if the patient receives some injury to the shoulder, we're not going to have them do this. We're not going to have them do this. It just stays in a neutral position, arms hanging down by their side. This is considered a trauma view. AP neutral. AP neutral is a trauma view. You leave the hand, you leave the arms hanging by their side. No need to move it or rotate it. It just hangs by their side. And if they're laying down, you just leave it down by their side. No rotation. okay? So the greater tubercle is going to be superimposed. It looks very similar to that to an internal rotation. The scapulohumeral joint is going to be well demonstrated in this projection. Same thing, hold still, don't move, hold your breath, okay? But you would apply this to what type of situation? Trauma, all right. So here's your trauma now. So I want to look at so neutral for AP, but now how do I get my lateral? Because if it was non-trauma, we'd have our patient turn their arm medially, right? Well, they have trauma, so I can't have them do this. So instead, you guys remember this? Okay, this is your transthoracic. This is your transthoracic lateral of the shoulder. Okay, we already discussed this last week, so we'll review it again. Patient is in a lateral position. The affected arm is going to be closest to the image receptor. Okay, the affected arm is going to be closest to the image receptor, and the unaffected arm will be up and out of the way. You may have to do a 10 to 15 degree cephalic angle, because what can happen is, even if you get this arm out of the way, this may get superimposed with the affected shoulder. Okay? So to get them unimposed, we're going to do a slight angulation to remove that superimposition of the two shoulders. It's not always necessary, but you may have to. Okay,
How would you know if you have to
How would you know?
take one first and then see how it comes out?
No. If you just, when you look at them in the front, you stand in front of them, you can see that one is lower than the other.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so stand in front of them to see the level of the two shoulders. Okay, if it looks like they're about the same level, then you're gonna have to shoot do an angulation. Okay, the central ray is gonna be directed at the surgical neck. Again, how do we find the surgical neck if the arm's on this side?
Line it up first.
Okay, line it up first. So have the unaffected arm by their side and center on this arm. Once you're centered, then raise it. Okay, breathing technique, yes?
Yes.
Because we're shooting through the thoracic cavity.
Short, shallow breath.
Short, shallow breaths. How long is our exposure going to be? About 4 seconds, approximately. Again, may not be exact, but approximately. Okay. So the proximal humerus is going to be clearly seen through the thorax with the arm in neutral position. All right.
Say 4 to 7 seconds?
A minimum of 4. I mean, again, it's what your institution does, but it has to be breathing. Long exposure, patient breathing. Okay. It can be 3 seconds. 2 seconds I don't think is enough, because you need a lot of motion, so at least 4 seconds. All right, so here's another one. All right, scapular Y, lateral. What are we looking at here? See scapular Y. We're looking at the lateral, lateral profile of the scapula. So again, patient is rotated 45 to 60 degrees. Well, how do you know what to use? Okay, because it's based on body habitus, and even then, this 45 to 60 degrees is not accurate. So what we want to do here is first, okay, let's just rotate our patient. Central ray is going to be directed at the scapular joint, Okay. Now the scapular Y, this is going to be confusing. The scapular Y is used to evaluate the shoulder joint. The scapular Y is used to evaluate the shoulder joint. Scapular Y is used to evaluate the shoulder joint, the scapulohumeral joint. Okay? So the body of the scapula is going to be superimposed end on end. Okay? The acromion and coracoid are symmetrical, then humeral head should be sitting inside the glenoid fossa. Now, I have a link here that shows you proper position. It's kind of a long, it's kind of a lengthy video, but it is very good. So you don't have to figure out, oh, should I go 45 degrees or should I go 60 degrees? This will tell you exactly how much rotation that you need, all right? And by the way, I forgot to mention, when doing the scapular Y, you place the affected side closest to the image receptor. So the affected side is closest to the image receptor. So if I'm looking at the right, body's going to be rotated right side down, left side up. If I'm looking at the left, it's going to be left side down, right side up. Closest to the image receptor of the affected side.
Hey there, this is EJ. We're going to talk about today a scapular Y view. It's a tricky little exam, mostly because everybody kind of does it their own way. And one of the reasons I think that everybody kind of does do it their own way is that both the Merrill's and the Bontrager books, neither one of them really give you any kind of a specific direction as to how to go about this exam. Both of them actually say, as far as positioning is concerned, to essentially rotate the patient between 45 and 60 degrees. And I mean, that's 15 degrees worth of essentially error. 45 degrees, or between 45 and 60, that gives you a lot of room to kind of maneuver and a lot of room to be under-rotated or over-rotated. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a really simple, easy, foolproof solution to getting a scapular Y on the first try every single time. And it uses a couple of very easily palpable bony protrusions, essentially, that you can feel on just about anybody in any situation, whether they're able to cooperate or not, whether they're able to roll or turn or twist or not. You can make it work. The points that you're going to use the superior angle of the scapula, which you can feel that, and you can, I mean, that kind of pops out on just about everybody. You feel that superior angle right there. And then if you follow the spine of the scapula up around the acromion to the AC joint, you can kind of feel where the clavicle comes together with the scapula, right at that AC joint. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a line and just draw a line straight between the AC joint and that superior angle right there. And draw that, make that perpendicular to your IR. That is your scapular Y every time. No troubles. Right on, dead on, APPA, it does not matter. Those are the points that you're looking at. You can feel it on anybody. Again, here's your superior angle, here's your HC joint. You just line those up, draw a perpendicular line, boom, there is your scapular Y every time. So, I will look at it for a little bit here. I'll even throw in some muscles just to kind of show you that, you know, this even with the tissues included, these are still points that you can use very easily. Lost my skeleton there for a minute, but there's your AC joint. There's your superior angle. Boom. Draw your line, and let's just kind of focus on there and get rid of the muscles so that we can see that, hey, we're pretty much right on. Maybe within a degree or two. You know, it's hard to do it when you can't actually feel the person. You're just kind of going off of a little 3D model here. But here's your Y view, maybe a degree off. But every single time, you're going to be able to palpate those points, get that AC joint lined up with the superior angle every single time.
Every single time. Okay? Before you follow these directions, and then we'll practice this in lab. Did you guys download the app to help you guys with your anatomy? It's exactly like that. If you guys download the app, it's very similar to what was just shown here on the video. So you can add tissue, you can remove tissue, you can isolate the bones, you can turn around in all different angles, and you can it's hard to visualize what we're talking about in two-dimensional in your textbook. But if you have that app, you can rotate those structures in any angle, and you can see all the structures that we're talking about, and why we position our patient in certain ways to see those different structures. It's kind of a live view of X-ray positioning if you have that app. How many of you guys have downloaded it? Okay, if you haven't, check it out. There is a free app for just the skeletal part of it, so it doesn't cost anything at all. It's free. Okay?
Evelyn, you pay for it, you got the free one.
All right, we won't do this. Okay, apical oblique. Okay, the apical oblique is to demonstrate any type of dislocation. Apical oblique is to demonstrate any type of dislocation. Okay, this is an extent of the Gration method. Remember, Gration method is 45 degrees towards the affected side. Here, now with apical oblique, we're going to place our patient 45, but with a caudal angle of 45 degrees. Now we're going to tack on an angulation of 45 degrees. So the apical oblique is 45, 45. 45 oblique of the patient, 45 angle towards the feet for your central ray. So I say 45, 45. All right? So place the patient in 45 degree obliquity. This is tough to do standing up, because if they're standing up and you got that steep angle, your tube has to be extended as far up as, to the ceiling as possible, and sometimes the central ray will be up above their shoulder near the ears and not down here. So what you may have to do if you're going to do it in an upright position is have the patient sit down on a chair, so now the central ray matches up with the scapulohumeral joint. Or you can also do this on the table. Okay, it's a lot easier to do it on the table. What side are we going to rotate our patient on?
The affected
The
side.
affected side. So if it's the right side, it's going to be an RPO. If it's the left side, it's an LPO with a 45-degree angulation. Okay? Now, here they're demonstrating this image with the arm resting on their shoulder. Well, this is going to be natural, because if a patient comes in with a dislocation, they're going to be doing this. It's not going to be down here, they'll be doing this. So they are already in this position. Okay? So this is what it looks like, okay? So this is the this is the apical oblique. It's going to show the relationship between the humeral head and the glenoid fossa. What looks odd about this image? I mean, it looks like all the other images, right? Okay, but because of that 45-degree steep angulation, look what happens to the ribs. The ribs should be going transversely. How's it going?
Almost vertical.
Almost vertical, because of that very steep angulation. So here are your ribs. Okay, also your clavicle, instead of going across, is now also pointing downward. So these are the key elements of this 45-degree apical, is ribs are almost vertical and the clavicle is almost vertical. So what good is this? You know, again, it's to evaluate dislocation. Well, here are the key components, all right? So if the head is projected inferiorly from the glenoid cavity, here's the head, here's the glenoid cavity right here. If it's below the glenoid cavity, it is an anterior dislocation. If it's projected above the cavity, which is, again, it's right here. This is the cavity right here. And here's the head. If it's above that, it is a posterior dislocation. Okay, so inferior, anterior dislocation, superior, posterior dislocation. What time's class over? Now? Are we done?
12.
How many more slides? 12? Okay. All right. Clavicle, real easy. Real easy, guys. Okay. Again, we're going to use a small cassette, okay, about 10 by 12, crosswise. Central ray is going to be directed perpendicular to the mid-clavicle. So you're going to open up your light field just enough to include the SC end and the AC end. So you open it up just wide enough to include both ends. Also, what you want to do is you want to collimate from top to bottom. Okay? The clavicle is a thin bone, so there's no need to have a large collimation. Just collimate to the bone. Okay? So top to bottom, but include both joints. This is your AP, so it's going to be perpendicular to the affected side. Hold your breath, don't move, click. Okay? Now, we can't rotate our clavicle, can we? Okay? So here's your AP. Is this my lateral? Does that make sense? Is this how I'm going to get a lateral of my clavicle?
Other way.
I know.
Other way.
Huh? This way?
No.
That doesn't make
You have
sense,
to
right?
change the
So what
angle.
we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the underside of the clavicle, and that will give us our lateral. So now we have an AP axial with a 15 to 30 degree cephalic angle.
So it's the same thing, all you're doing is just changing the
Yeah,
angle.
so I'm gonna keep my patient up on the board, and now I'm just gonna drop my tube, angle about 15 to 30 degrees towards the clavicle, mid-clavicle. Again, hold still, don't move. So this is how I'm gonna get my lateral. Here's your AP, here's your lateral.
I don't even want to go 15 to 14.
Just go anywhere between there. I usually just set it at 15. Okay. All right, any questions here? Now, what is the problem with an AP projection?
OID?
There's a scapula on the back,
Well,
so.
okay, I heard it's OID. Okay? Here's your clavicle, here's your image receptor. Okay? So the proper way of doing this would be what?
PA.
PA, so you're gonna turn your patient around. But this is harder to do because you don't know where the center of your image receptor is. Okay? So you would do a PA, and instead of a cephalic angle, if you're doing a PA for the axial, you're gonna do a caudal angle of about 50 to 30 degrees.
So it's still gonna be a lateral oblique? Is it gonna be PA oblique, or it's gonna be just PA? Even though with,
It's a PA projection axial. Is that what you mean? What do you mean lateral
The
oblique?
PA oblique, because it's gonna be.
PO oblique what? Oblique is body part position. Oblique applies to body position.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Okay. All right. So axial is referring to a tube angulation.
Right.
Okay. So PA projection axial. Okay. So if we're doing a PA, it's just a reverse angle. So it looks something like this. So, so here we have a true AP. This is the correct orientation because the clavicle is going to go across the first, second, possible third rib. And when it's axial, now you're projecting the clavicle above the ribs, and that's what you have up there. So this gives us a true AP or PA, and that's going to give us a somewhat of a lateral of the clavicle by applying an axial angulation. Okay? Hold your breath, don't move. Again, collimate as tightly as you can because it's a thin bone. We want to maintain high contrast. Okay, here's your AC joints. Any questions about the clavicle? All right, AC joints. AC joints, where are your AC joints? On opposite sides of your shoulder, right? Generally, these are done bilaterally because we're doing it for comparison. You're not just shooting one, you're shooting both. Okay? Now, it's usually also done in one shot to include both joints. And this is why we do it at 72 inches versus 40 inches, because what happens when you're going from 40 to 72? What are you doing with magnification?
Decreasing.
You're decreasing it. So if we pull our tube further out, we can include more of the joints within the image receptor. Okay? So you're gonna take a large image receptor, your largest one possible, and it's gonna go crosswise. Okay, because we want to include both joints. So the largest image receptor, placing it crosswise to include both joints. Okay? You're gonna open up your field just large enough. Again, we're not looking at the chest, we're not looking at the neck, we're looking at the joint. So just, you need to collimate up and down tightly, and from side to side to include both joints. It's gonna be done in 2 phases. One will be without weights. Okay, it's just gonna be in neutral. The second one is, now we're gonna use the second one to visualize any type of separation of the joints, so we're gonna put weights. We're gonna put weights hanging around the patient's wrists. We have like 5-pounders in the department. And the key here is you want to let it hang on the wrist. Okay, but you don't want them holding the sandbags, because when they hold the sandbags, naturally what are you gonna wanna do? You're gonna wanna tense up to support those sandbags. So if you let them hang on the wrist, the shoulders can drop, demonstrating any type of separation of that joint. Okay? The center ray is gonna be directed 1 inch above the jugular notch. You guys remember what the jugular notch is? Okay, that little dip right here of your sternum. So you're gonna be 1 inch above that. Okay? Patient gonna hold their breath?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So hold your breath, don't move. This can also be done on table. If the patient can't stand up, we'll give them a sheet, and they'll grab on both sides of the sheet while they push on the sheet to bring their shoulders down. Okay? Again, what's the problem with that?
They're gonna
You're gonna be
tense up.
fighting with yourself. So as you're pushing down, you're gonna naturally want to pull up. And that doesn't give good demonstration of the AC joints, but again, we gotta do what we gotta do. But this is not a really good technique, but if that's all we have, that's what we have. Okay? So this is what it looks like. The entire upper chest from one AC joint to the next. You do it with weights and you do it without weights. Now, can it be done unilaterally? Yes, it can be done unilaterally, but now instead of taking one without weights and then the second one with weights, if you're doing it unilaterally, now it's going to be 4 different shots. Okay? Because without, with, without, with. So again, it's whatever the protocol is at the hospital. You can do it including both sides, or you may have to do it individually. Okay? Key here is making sure that you use your correct marker so the doctor know which is the left and which is the right.
They both say with weights, so which one is actually without?
They're both with weights. With use bilateral, and this is unilateral. So they're both with weights.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. So here is weight bearing. So this is, again, this is without weights, this is with weights. It's supposed to be a comparison. There's an arrow there. I don't know what the arrow is there for because there is no, I don't see any obvious separation of the AC joint. This is just for visual demonstration. Okay. The best way to determine whether or not there is separation of the AC joint is usually with a CT or an MRI. Not X-rays. But do they do this? Yes. Remember I told you guys the hospital plays an insurance game? Okay? So they go with the most basic examinations first, even though maybe they know the MRI is the best thing to do. So we'll do it. We may not see anything, and then they'll end up doing a CT and MRI anyway. All right. A couple more here. So here we have an AP scapula. AP scapula. Patient can either be standing or on the table. Now think about this. Would you be laying down on the table if you have scapular injury?
No.
If you had scapular injury, this would be very painful to do, so you probably most likely will do it standing up, okay? So the arm is gonna be abducted 90 degrees, so I do this, okay? I just have, instead of having them do this, I have them put their arm up and I have them salute to me. Same way. It's a lot easier to do this than bring the arm up. That This is resting on your forehead, okay? So, do the salute. It's by abducting your arm, it's gonna put pull the scapula laterally from the lung field, okay? The central ray is gonna be directed 2 inches inferior to the coracoid process. Again, you're gonna use a 10 by 12 cassette. Now, with a 10 by 12 cassette or 10 by 12 collimation, are you going to collimate it crosswise or lengthwise?
Crosswise?
How's your scapula going? Is it going this way or is it going this way?
Oh,
It's gonna be going this way, right? So you wanna go lengthwise. Okay? So 2 inches inferior to the coracoid or 2 inches medial to the level of the axilla. 2 inches medial to the axilla. This is another view in which breathing is required because your scapula is superimposed by many structures, your lung and your ribs and whatever else is in its path. So we need breathing technique of, again, about 3 to 4 seconds minimum. Okay? So here we have the scapula out of the field of the lung field. This is a pretty easy one to do, right? Now, lateral scapula.